I can still hear the sound of the applause. It was deafening. The kind of clapping that makes your chest vibrate, makes your palms sweat, makes you want to cry and laugh at the same time. But even louder than the applause was the silence coming from one row of chairs. My row. The one I'd reserved for my family. Empty. Every single seat. Do you know what it feels like to scan a crowd, your eyes searching for one familiar face, and find none? Your heart does this weird thing, like it skips a beat but then keeps hammering, trying to convince you that maybe they're just late. Maybe they're outside. Maybe any second now they'll walk in, smiling, proud, waving at you. But deep down, you already know the truth. They weren't there. Not one of them. I had imagined this night 1,000 times. I had practiced my speech in the mirror, rewritten it on sticky notes, even whispered lines on the subway. And every version of it, every single version, started the same way. Looking at my family, my mom and dad and brother, tears in their eyes, finally seeing me, finally understanding. But the spotlight hit me and all I saw was absence. All I felt was a chill that no stage light could burn away. I held that trophy in my hands, heavy, colder than I expected. Everyone was standing, clapping, cheering my name. And yet the first words that formed in my mind weren't "thank you" or "I did it." It was just one question. Why didn't they come? Have you ever had a victory feel like a betrayal? That's what it was. This was supposed to be my night. The night where all the late hours, all the doubts, all the sacrifices finally meant something. Instead, it felt like a cruel reminder that no matter how high I climbed, I would always be alone at the top. I forced a smile. That's what you do when cameras are everywhere. I thanked the committee. I cracked a joke. People laughed. They thought I was glowing. Inside, I was crumbling. The applause died down, replaced by the shuffle of people leaving, the buzz of conversations. I lingered, just stood there, clutching the trophy like it was the only anchor keeping me upright. The room was half empty by then. My row, still fully empty. Silence has a sound, trust me. It roared in my ears. I tried to convince myself it didn't matter, that I had made it here on my own, that maybe this was a sign, that their presence was never the measure of my worth. But the child in me, the little girl who had begged to be seen, was screaming. Why wasn't I enough for them to show up? And in that moment, under the fading glow of stage lights, I realized something I had never dared to say out loud. Sometimes the people you call family can be your loudest absence. I didn't know it yet, but that silence would echo far beyond this night, because when I finally looked down at my phone, its screen lighting up in the dark, it told a story louder than the applause, louder than the silence, louder than anything else in that room. 66 missed calls. Stay with me. Because that's where everything started to unravel. The stage lights had barely cooled when I finally stepped into the hallway, clutching that trophy like it might melt if I let go. My phone buzzed in my hand, the screen blinding against the dim backstage glow. And then I froze. 66 missed calls. Not 6, not 16, 66. All from the same group chat. My family. Have you ever had your stomach drop so hard it feels like the ground disappears beneath you? That was me. My fingers were trembling as I swiped, scrolling through the flood of texts. Where are you? Answer the phone. Call us back now. David is in the hospital. My chest tightened. Hospital? My little brother? My mind spun with images of flashing sirens, oxygen masks, panic. I felt heat rising in my cheeks. The kind that isn't just fear, it's shame. The kind that whispers, you should have been there. Then I read further. Allergic reaction, seafood. He's stable now. Stable, alive, breathing. Okay. And yet, the tone of their messages wasn't relief. It wasn't, "Thank God he's fine." It was blame. Every word screamed it. This is your fault for not coming. This is your fault for not answering. You know that moment when you realize people aren't calling you to share news, they're calling you to dump guilt on your shoulders? That's exactly what this was. My hands went cold, but my throat burned. I couldn't even tell what I felt more, fear for my brother or anger at how quickly they turned the spotlight on me. I called back. Straight to voicemail, I tried again. Then again. Finally, my mom answered. Her voice sharp, not even a hello. "Anna, where have you been? We've been calling for hours. David could have died." Could have, not did. Not, "Thank God he's okay." Just could have. And then came the dagger. "You chose your little award over your own family." I swear I could feel the trophy in my hand grow heavier, like it was made of lead instead of glass. I stammered something. I don't even remember what. Maybe it was, "I'm sorry." Maybe it was, "I didn't know." But nothing I said mattered. She'd already made up her mind. What would you have done? Seriously, picture it. You're standing there in the afterglow of the biggest night of your life, and suddenly your family turns it into the darkest one. Do you drop everything? Book the first flight? Rush to their side, even though they've spent years never showing up for you? Or do you stay put? Hold on to the one night that was finally yours, even for just a few hours. That's the choice they shoved in my face. And let me tell you, it didn't feel like a choice at all. It felt like a trap. A guilt trap. I leaned against the cold wall, phone pressed to my ear even after the call ended. The applause from the auditorium was still echoing faintly, muffled through the doors. Inside, they were celebrating me. Out here, I was already the villain. And isn't it strange how quickly joy can evaporate? Just minutes earlier, I thought my heart might burst from pride. Now it was twisting in knots. I felt small again, invisible, like the girl who never mattered. My hands were still shaking as I opened my camera roll. I stared at a photo someone had just texted me. Me on stage, smiling, holding the trophy high. The crowd blurred in the background. And then my eyes slid to the empty row. Always empty. That image burned into me. Proof that no matter what I achieved, I'd always have to fight not just for recognition, but for the right to even feel proud. I wanted to scream, to throw the phone against the wall. But instead, I just whispered to myself, barely audible, "Why is it never enough for them?" And maybe that's when the first crack appeared. The moment I realized this wasn't just about one night or one phone call. This was about years. A lifetime of being measured against impossible scales, of being told love was conditional, of being made to carry weight that was never mine. 66 missed calls, 66 reminders that in their eyes, I would never be enough. And yet something deep inside me whispered back, maybe the problem isn't me, maybe it's them. I didn't believe it yet, not fully, but that seed was planted. Stay with me. Because the story that started with 66 missed calls, it would lead to a moment that changed everything. Ever felt invisible in your own family? That was me. I grew up in Boston. Big brownstone house, polished wooden floors, walls lined with framed degrees and awards. My parents were the type who thrived on achievement. The kind of people who measured love in report cards and resumes. And in that house, there were always two categories, the golden child and the one you forget is even in the room. Guess which one I was? My little brother David, he shined, straight A's, varsity soccer, the kid who could trip over his shoelaces and still get applause. My parents beamed at every game, every school assembly, every spelling bee. They never missed a thing. They cheered so loud you could hear them from the parking lot. And me? I was the background noise. The girl sketching in the corner while they filmed David scoring a goal. The one whose art projects got shoved onto the fridge for a day before being replaced by another certificate with his name. Don't get me wrong, I tried. God, I tried. Piano lessons, debate team, honor roll. I even won a regional art contest once. They didn't come. Not because they couldn't, but because my mom said we already had plans. Dinner at some client's house. My dad said we'll celebrate later. Later never came. Do you know what it feels like when the seat you reserve for them at your recital stays empty? Not once, not twice, over and over. At some point, you stop saving them a seat, you stop hoping, you stop asking. And that's when invisibility sets in. The strange thing is, when you're the invisible child, you learn to shrink yourself, to take up less space, to clap quietly at your own victories, to pretend it doesn't sting when your parents brag about your sibling at every family dinner while your name barely makes it into the conversation. But it stings. Every time. I remember one Christmas I was 14. I had spent weeks painting this huge canvas, pouring every ounce of myself into it. It was the first time I thought, this is who I am. I wrapped it up, nervous and excited. When they unwrapped it, they smiled politely, said nice, then moved on to David's new soccer trophy. They called relatives, passed the phone around, gushed about him. My painting? Leaned against the wall, forgotten before the wrapping paper even hit the floor. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, telling myself I shouldn't care. But I did. I cared so much it hurt. And that pattern, it never stopped. Every milestone blurred into the same script. My wins were hobbies. His wins were destiny. Maybe you know that feeling. Maybe you've lived in a house where someone else's light blinded everyone to your glow, where your silence was mistaken for strength when really it was survival. That's why, standing there with 66 missed calls, none of it surprised me. Not really. Because deep down, I already knew where I stood in the family hierarchy. Still, knowing it doesn't make it hurt less. Here's the truth. Invisibility leaves scars. They don't show up on skin, but they settle deep, in the places where your confidence should live. They whisper lies. You're not enough. You'll never be enough. But let me tell you something. Sometimes those whispers become fuel. The invisible child learns to dream louder, to fight harder, to build something that no one can overlook. That's why that night, with my phone buzzing in my hand and guilt clawing at my chest, another voice rose inside me. A different one. A stronger one. It asked, what if you don't need them to see you anymore? What if there's another way? And that question, that tiny flicker, was about to lead me somewhere I never expected. Stay with me, because the story of the invisible child was only the beginning. After the awards ceremony ended, when the lights dimmed and the applause faded, I lingered in the empty hall. Everyone else left with their families, arms linked, voices rising with pride. I gathered my plaque, my flowers, the hollow souvenirs of a night that should have felt different. Instead, it felt like proof. Proof that I could climb as high as I wanted, but the people I longed to see at the top would never show up. I was walking toward the exit when I noticed him, an older man, maybe in his late 60s, sitting quietly near the back row. I swear he hadn't clapped once during the ceremony, hadn't cheered or stood, but when I passed by, he rose to his feet. Anna? His voice cracked like dry wood. I froze. Do I know you? He shook his head slowly with a small, knowing smile. Not yet. And then he pressed something into my hand. Cold metal. A key. Old-fashioned, heavy, the kind that feels like it could unlock a door no one remembers. I blinked at him. "What is this?" He leaned close, and with a softness that sent chills down my spine, he whispered, "Welcome home." Home? That word burned, because what did it even mean anymore? The house in Boston where I grew up never felt like home. Four walls, sure. Family dinners, sure. But home? No, not once. I stared down at the key in my palm. Its teeth glinted under the lobby lights, sharp and deliberate. A key doesn't exist without a lock, and locks don't exist without secrets. I looked up to ask him again, but he was already walking away. No business card, no explanation. Just a stranger who somehow knew my name and left me holding a question in the shape of iron. For a second, I almost laughed. The whole night had been a storm. My family absent, my phone filled with guilt trap calls, my heart split open, and now this? Some mysterious man, a cryptic phrase, a key that looked like it belonged in a novel. Not in New York City in 2023. But there it was, resting in my hand. Heavy. Real. Do you ever get the sense that life drops breadcrumbs? That sometimes, right when you're drowning, something appears. Not enough to save you outright, but just enough to keep you curious? That was me. Standing under the fluorescent lobby lights, clutching a key I didn't ask for, wondering if maybe the universe was daring me to follow. And that phrase, "Welcome home," it clung to me. It wrapped around my ribs tighter than my family's silence ever had. Home. What does home mean to you? Is it the place you grew up? The people who share your last name? Or is it something else? A feeling, a recognition? A space where you're finally seen? I didn't know yet, but the stranger seemed certain. I slipped the key into my pocket, half expecting it to vanish like a dream. It didn't. I could feel its weight every step I took outside, the cold metal pressing against my thigh like a reminder. There's more to this story than you think. That night, I couldn't sleep. My phone buzzed again with family drama. My chest tightened with the same old guilt. But beneath all that noise was the quiet echo of a man's voice. Welcome home. And for the first time, I wondered, what if home wasn't where I came from? What if it was still waiting to be found? Stay with me, because that key, it wasn't just metal. It was an invitation. And it changed everything. I couldn't stop staring at the key. For days it burned a hole in my pocket, heavy and strange, like it was waiting for me to notice it. Every time I reached into my coat, my fingers brushed against the cool ridges of its teeth. A part of me wanted to throw it away, pretend it meant nothing. But another part, deeper, quieter, kept whispering, "Find the lock." And one night I did. The address came scribbled on a folded slip of paper tucked into the award bouquet. I hadn't even noticed it until the roses started to wilt, petals softening into brown. The paper was thin, almost translucent, with just 3 words written in careful block letters. Broadway, basement, midnight. Sounds like the start of a bad movie, right? But my curiosity outweighed my fear. Because when you've spent your whole life invisible, even the smallest breadcrumb feels like a lifeline. So, I went. The street was nearly empty that night, wet from a drizzle that left everything glistening under neon signs. I found the address, a boarded-up building that looked abandoned. The front door was locked, but there was a smaller iron gate at the side. My hand shook as I pulled out the key. It fit. The lock turned with a metallic click, and the door groaned open. A flight of stairs led down into shadows. My heels tapped against concrete as I descended, the air growing cooler, thicker, tinged with paint and dust. And then I heard voices. Laughter, soft music, the shuffle of brushes against canvas, the low strum of a guitar. When I reached the bottom, I froze. It wasn't empty at all. The basement had been transformed into a studio. No, a sanctuary. The walls were covered in half-finished murals, the floor scattered with canvases, notebooks, sketches taped together in messy collages. Edison bulbs dangled from exposed beams, casting warm circles of light. There were people everywhere, painters, writers, designers, dancers. Every corner hummed with creation, and no one looked up at me like I was an intruder. They just smiled. One woman, covered in streaks of blue paint, walked past me and pressed a mug of tea into my hands, like I belonged there. "Welcome," she said simply, before turning back to her easel. And then I saw him, Harold, the old man from the ceremony, sitting at a worn oak table surrounded by sketchbooks stacked like towers. He motioned me over. I sat, my hands wrapped around the tea, trying to still their trembling. "What is this place?" I asked. Harold leaned back, eyes twinkling beneath silver brows. "We call it the Collective, a home for the unseen, the overlooked, the ones whose families never understood what burned inside them." The words sank into me like warm water. The unseen. That was me. That had always been me. He continued, "Every person in this room knows what it feels like to be dismissed, ignored, told they were wasting their time. Here, we don't ask for permission. We create, and we see each other." I wanted to cry, because for the first time, someone wasn't asking me to shrink. I glanced around the room. A dancer rehearsed alone in a corner, her reflection fractured in a cracked mirror. A poet read his lines aloud to no one, just to hear them echo. A musician tapped rhythms on the table, smiling to himself. None of them looked polished or perfect. They looked raw, real, alive, and for once I didn't feel out of place. Harold slid a notebook toward me. "This is yours now. Whatever you make, whatever you write, whatever you dream, this place will hold it. And we will hold you." My throat tightened. I whispered, "Why me?" He smiled gently. "Because you've always been home here. You just didn't know it yet." Something shifted in my chest, a small crack, letting light in. For years, I thought home was supposed to be the people who shared my last name, but maybe home was here, in this basement, with strangers who somehow felt closer to me than my own blood. I clutched the notebook like a lifeline. And I have to ask you, what if a single key could change everything? What if the thing you've been waiting for your whole life isn't recognition from the people who never saw you, but belonging with the ones who always would? That night, I walked out of the Collective with paint on my sleeve, music in my ears, and, for the first time, hope in my chest. I didn't know yet how much it would matter, how much it would be tested, but in that moment I felt it. I wasn't invisible anymore. I didn't even want to pack the bag. My suitcase sat open on the bed, half empty, mocking me with its silence. A bathing suit, a sundress. Flip-flops I hadn't worn since college. None of it made sense. How could I think about white sand beaches when my chest was still raw from that night? Those empty seats staring back at me under the spotlight. But my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Texts, calls. My mother's clipped voice on voicemail. "Your brother needs you. We're all here. You need to come. Don't be selfish." Selfish. That word again. It always came back to that. I could win an award on a stage in New York, But in my family's eyes, I was still selfish if I didn't orbit around their needs. The Bahamas. They had gone there straight from Christmas Eve. A family tradition, they called it. But when I didn't show up, when I chose the award night instead, they treated it like betrayal. And now, with my brother's allergy scare still fresh, they said the only way to make it right was to come. So there I was, shoving sunscreen into my suitcase, tears blurring the zipper. But here's the thing. It wasn't just a trip. It was a test. Every muscle in my body knew it. Because the choice wasn't between New York and the Bahamas. It was between me and them. Between the life I was finally building and the guilt they wanted me to carry back into the sand. The airport smelled like burnt coffee and disinfectant. My ticket was crumpled in my hand, damp from sweat. I watched other families around me, laughing, balancing kids on their hips, taking selfies by the departure screen, and all I could think was, why doesn't mine feel like this? Why does mine feel like a courtroom and I'm always on trial? I boarded the plane anyway. The seatbelt clicked, the engines hummed to life, and I pressed my forehead against the window. Outside, the lights of the city blurred into streaks. My heart pounded against my ribs like it wanted out. And then, the sound. The one that still makes my stomach flip when I think about it. The roar of the engines as the plane lifted. That sudden jolt, the weight pressing me back into the seat. And in my head, a voice whispered, "You don't want to be here, Pattern Interrupt." You know that moment when your whole body screams, "Wrong turn," but you go anyway? That was me. I closed my eyes. For a flash, I saw the collective, the basement glowing with Edison lights, strangers who weren't strangers at all, the smell of paint and tea, Harold's voice telling me I wasn't invisible. And then, snap. My mother's face pushed into my mind. Her disapproving frown, the sharp tilt of her head when she said I owed it to the family. Tell me, what would you have done? Chosen the light you'd just found, or the duty that dragged like an anchor? The flight was only a few hours, but it felt like years. Every bump of turbulence rattled my resolve. Every cry from a baby 2 rows back made me ache with exhaustion. I kept replaying their words. Your brother could have died, and where were you? Accepting some trophy. By the time we touched down, I felt hollowed out, like I had left my real self back in New York, still clutching that notebook Harold had given me. The humid air hit me as I stepped off the plane. Heavy, salty, thick. Palm trees swayed under fluorescent lights. Tourists chattered around me, voices bubbling with excitement. But inside, I wasn't on vacation. I was walking into a war zone. I dragged my suitcase toward the taxi line, my chest tight. I already knew what was waiting on the other side. Accusations, blame, a family ready to remind me once again that no matter what I achieved out there in the world, in here, in their world, I was never enough. And I have to tell you, that's a flight I didn't want to take. But I did. Because sometimes the hardest journeys aren't the ones on a map. They're the ones you make back into places you swore you'd never return to. Hospitals always smell the same. Bleach, metal, something faintly sour, like fear that seeps into the tiles. The automatic doors opened, and the cold fluorescent glow swallowed me whole. I dragged my suitcase across the polished floor, its wheels echoing like accusations with every turn. I should have felt relief. My brother was alive, breathing, stable. That's what the last text said. But the moment I walked through those doors, all I felt was dread. I spotted them instantly. My parents, my aunt, even a couple of cousins I hadn't seen in years. They were all gathered outside the double doors to the ward, their faces tight, their bodies stiff. But instead of rushing to hug me, instead of the sobs or the gratitude you'd expect, they froze, like I was an intruder. Their eyes cut into me. No words at first, just stares, cold, heavy, and then my mother broke the silence. Finally. And that was it. Just one word, loaded with everything she wanted to say but didn't. Finally. After your little award show, after your big city party, after your selfish detour. I opened my mouth, but my father's eyes stopped me. They burned in a way I hadn't seen since I was a child, disappointed, accusing. Like I was the reason this happened. And here's the part that still knots my stomach. No one asked how I was. No one asked what I had been doing or if I was okay. They didn't see me dragging myself through guilt, through airports, through sleepless nights replaying 66 missed calls. They only saw the villain arriving late. I whispered, "How is he?" My mom's arms crossed. Better now, but it could have been worse. Her voice cracked, not from grief, but from anger. And in that hallway, under the buzzing lights, I realized they weren't looking for comfort. They were looking for someone to blame. Flashback, quick, sharp. Me at 12, my brother falling off his bike, scraping his knee. He cried. They yelled at me for not watching him closely. Another time, he failed a test. I got scolded for distracting him with nonsense. Always my fault. Always. Back to the hallway. My aunt muttered something under her breath. My cousins kept their eyes low. My father shook his head, and then my brother's voice from inside the room, weak but audible. "Is she here?" For a second, my chest cracked open. He wanted me. He asked for me. But before I could move, my mom's hand gripped my arm, hard. "Don't upset him," she hissed, as if my presence itself was poison. They looked at me like I was the villain. Pattern interrupt. Let that sink in. My brother almost died, and somehow I was the problem. I wanted to scream, to slam my fists against those sterile white walls, to shout, I wasn't the one who left peanuts on the counter. I wasn't the one who ignored his allergy. But my throat closed up, because deep down I knew logic didn't matter. In this family, truth never saved me. So I stood there, swallowing every word as the fluorescent light hummed above us. The hall felt colder by the second. Do you know what it's like to arrive with love in your chest, only to be met with daggers in their eyes? That was me, and it hit me harder than any turbulence, any missed call, any empty chair on a ward night, because in that moment I realized something terrifying. I wasn't walking into a family crisis. I was walking into a trial. And I had already been sentenced guilty. The room was too quiet. Hospital walls always carry this heavy silence, but that day it felt like the walls themselves were listening. I sat in the corner chair, the Apex Award still tucked inside my bag, its sharp edges pressing into me like a secret I wasn't sure I should reveal. Then my father spoke. His voice low, almost casual, but every word hit me like a dart. "So, how was your little hobby night?" Hobby. That's what he called it. Not the years of sweat. Not the endless nights drafting designs in a cold apartment. Not the biggest moment of my career. Just a little hobby. I forced a smile that didn't reach my eyes. It wasn't a hobby. I won the Apex Award. My mother rolled her eyes. Whatever it's called. Your brother could have died, Anna, while you were out there chasing trophies. That word, trophies, dripped with contempt. Like I was a child collecting stickers while the real adults handled life. And then my brother, pale on the hospital bed, whispered through cracked lips. "She missed it, didn't she?" I froze. He wasn't even looking at me. He was looking at them, seeking their confirmation. And they gave it, with silence, with nods. With the weight of shared disappointment pressing me deeper into that chair, I couldn't breathe. My fingers curled around the award inside my bag until my knuckles turned white. I wanted to defend myself, to shout, "I didn't put peanuts near you. I didn't choose Bahamas over my own sister's award night." But no one in that room was listening for truth. They only wanted a villain, and I was the perfect candidate. Something snapped. Slow, deliberate. I pulled the Apex Award from my bag. Its golden surface caught the fluorescent hospital light, scattering reflections across their stunned faces. For once, they were silent. Not from judgment, but from shock. I placed it on the table between us. Not gently, not politely, I slammed it down. The sound cracked through the sterile room like thunder. Nurses peeked through the doorway. My brother flinched. Everyone else just stared. "This," I said, my voice shaking but fierce, "is not a hobby. This is the peak of my career, do you understand? The peak. While you were sipping cocktails on a beach, I was standing on a stage in New York City, alone, winning this, without a single one of you there." Their mouths stayed closed, their eyes darted. My aunt coughed into her sleeve. Nobody moved to touch the award. Nobody congratulated me. Rage poured out of me, but it wasn't wild. It was controlled. Sharp like the edge of a blade. Years of being overlooked condensed into a single truth. You chose a vacation over me, over your own daughter, and you've been doing it my entire life. Choosing him, choosing yourselves, choosing anything but me. Pattern interrupt. Let me ask you, what would you have done? Would you have kept swallowing it? Or would you have slammed that truth down too? The silence stretched so long I could hear the beeping of the machines, the hum of the vents, even my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. Finally, my father leaned back. His voice was cold, steady. "You've always been dramatic, Anna." Dramatic. That was it. That was their verdict. Not "we're sorry," not "we should have been there," just another dismissal wrapped in a single word. And yet, I didn't regret it. For the first time in my life, I wasn't invisible. I wasn't quiet. I wasn't their scapegoat. I had slammed my truth onto the table for all of them to see, and whether they acknowledged it or not, they couldn't unhear it. I looked at the award one last time, gleaming defiantly under the fluorescent lights. Then I looked straight at them. You don't get to rewrite this. I earned it, with or without you. If you think this was shocking, wait until you hear what happened next. Stay with me. The award sat there on the table, glowing under the hospital lights like it didn't belong in that room. My slam still echoed in my ears. The sharp clang of it hitting the surface louder than the heart monitors, louder than their breaths. I had spoken my truth. For once I hadn't swallowed it. And then, nothing. Silence. Not one word, not one apology, not one hint of recognition. They just stared. My father crossed his arms. My mother pressed her lips into that thin line she used when she wanted to erase me without saying it out loud. My brother turned his face away. My aunt shifted uncomfortably in her chair, like she was waiting for someone to break the tension, but wasn't brave enough to do it herself. Do you know that moment after a storm when you expect the air to feel cleaner, fresher, but instead it's heavy, suffocating? That's what it was like. I had detonated years of buried hurt, but all I got back was their silence. And in that silence, clarity crept in. Flashback. Me, at 16, standing on stage at a school art show. My painting won first place. I scanned the crowd, searching for my parents' faces. Empty chairs. Again, always empty. Back then, I told myself they were busy, important, that one day they'd show up, back to now. The truth pressed down on me like the hospital ceiling itself. They never would. I wanted to cry, but the tears wouldn't come. Instead, it was like my chest hollowed out, making space for a truth I couldn't unknow. They weren't going to see me. They weren't going to choose me, and for the first time I stopped hoping they would. That's when I knew nothing would ever be the same. Pattern, interrupt, whisper that line, let it land. Because here's the thing, people think anger is the breaking point, the explosion, the slam, but it's not. The real breaking point is after, when the room goes still. When you realize the people you screamed for aren't coming closer, they're just gone, even when they're sitting right in front of you. My brother coughed, pulling the attention back to him. Everyone leaned in, my mom adjusting his blanket, my dad asking about the doctor, my aunt offering water. And me, I sat there, invisible again, just like always. Only this time, it didn't sting the same way. It wasn't the wound reopening, it was the scar forming. I stared at the Apex Award. Its golden edges looked sharp enough to cut. For years, I thought this would be the thing to make them proud, the proof that I was worth their attention. But in that moment, it wasn't a trophy anymore. It was a mirror, and in it, I saw the truth. I had been climbing a mountain for people who never cared if I reached the top. And that bitter clarity, it was almost freeing. What about you? Have you ever fought for someone's approval, only to realize they were never planning to give it? That's the ache I sat with in that hospital room. And it was the moment I began to let go. No applause, no hugs, just the soft hum of machines and the sound of my own heart finally telling me the truth. After that night in the hospital, my mind wouldn't shut off. I kept replaying every second. The slam, the silence, the way their eyes slid away from me like I was a stain they couldn't scrub out. But the more I replayed it, the less it felt like just my story. It felt older, deeper. I ended up sitting in Aunt Valerie's kitchen a few days later. Her house always smelled like chamomile tea and wood polish, the kind of smell that makes you feel safe even when you're breaking inside. She poured me a cup without asking. She always knew when I needed one. She listened, not with interruptions or corrections, just listened. And when I was done, she sighed a long, heavy sigh. "Anna," she said, "you're living the same story your mother lived. And she's living the same story her mother lived before her." I blinked at her. "What do you mean?" She leaned back, her eyes soft but serious. "Favoritism, Silence. Daughters pushed aside while sons carried the crown. You think you're the first to feel invisible? I watched your mother shrink in her own home. Your grandfather adored your uncle. Your grandmother blamed her for everything. And when your mom had kids, guess what? She repeated the pattern." It hit me like a slap. Flashback, my mother, standing in the kitchen years ago, scolding me for wanting to apply to an art school. "Do you know how expensive that is? Do you know how unrealistic you sound?" And then, minutes later, praising my brother for making the varsity soccer team, calling him our star. "So it's not me?" I whispered. She shook her head. "It was never you. It was the curse." The curse. That's what she called it. A generational curse. Not of witches or spells, but of choices. Choices passed down like hand-me-down clothes that never fit, stitched with resentment and silence. And suddenly, everything made sense. It wasn't that I was broken. It wasn't that I wasn't enough. It was that I was born into a script that was written long before me. A script where daughters like me were expected to dim, so sons like my brother could shine. Pattern interrupt. What about you? Have you ever realized the pain you carry wasn't actually yours to begin with? That it was inherited, like a scar passed down through bloodlines? That realization, it didn't erase the hurt, but it shifted it. For the first time, I could see my mother not just as the villain in my story, but as a girl who once stood where I stood, wanting to be seen, wanting to be chosen, and never getting it. Valerie reached across the table, her hand warm over mine. The difference is, Anna, you can choose to end it. Her words sank deep. End it. Not carry it. Not pass it forward. End it. And for the first time in a long time, I felt something other than bitterness. I felt relief. Like maybe the story wasn't doomed to repeat. Like maybe the curse could stop with me. I walked out of her kitchen that night breathing lighter. The air tasted different, less like guilt, more like possibility. And that's when it clicked. This whole time, I thought my family defined me. But maybe my real legacy wasn't about living under their shadow. Maybe it was about breaking free of it. There comes a moment when silence feels heavier than words. When you realize that not saying anything has cost you years of your life. For me, that moment came after Aunt Valerie's kitchen talk. I sat in my apartment, lights dim, the award still sitting on the counter where I had dropped it days ago. Dust was already gathering on it. Isn't it wild how fast something can lose its shine once you stop chasing someone else's approval? I stared at that trophy. Not as proof, not as a plea, but as a reminder I had earned it, alone, without them. And for once, that was enough. The next day, I picked up the phone. My mother's voice was sharp, businesslike. She launched straight into updates about my brother's recovery, about travel plans, about how I should show up more as a daughter. And that's when I felt it rise in me. The line. I took a deep breath. "Mom," I said. My voice didn't shake this time. "No." Silence. Then a clipped laugh. "No? No what?" "No more." My chest tightened, but my words came out clear. No more sacrificing myself just to be tolerated. No more pretending I don't see what's happening. No more giving everything and getting nothing back. I heard the clatter of a spoon on her end, like she'd dropped it in shock. "Anna, this is not the time. It's exactly the time." My voice cut sharper than I expected. For years, I kept hoping you'd see me, that you'd choose me. But I finally understand. You won't. And I can't keep bleeding for a family that only takes. Do you know what it feels like to finally say the thing you've swallowed for years? It doesn't feel gentle. It feels like fire, like breaking glass, like freedom wrapped in pain. Flashback. Me as a kid, clutching a handmade Mother's Day card, waiting for her to get home. The way her eyes barely skimmed it before she asked if my brother's homework was done. That old sting rose in me, but instead of hurting, it fueled me now. "Anna, you're being dramatic," she said. I almost laughed. Dramatic. The word they always used to silence me. This time, I didn't let it stick. Maybe, but I'd rather be dramatic than invisible. And there it was. My line, drawn sharp in the sand. When was the last time you said no? Really said it. Not the polite no, not the excuse, the kind that feels like ripping chains off your own skin. That was my moment. I hung up before she could reel me back with guilt or shame. And as the call ended, I realized I was shaking. But it wasn't fear, it was power. The room around me looked the same. Same peeling paint near the window, same hum of the fridge, same dusty trophy. But I was different. Something inside me had shifted. I wasn't waiting for their applause anymore. I wasn't waiting for their permission. And here's the truth. Sometimes drawing the line doesn't change them, it changes you. Because once you say no, once you claim that boundary, you can't go back to the smaller version of yourself. You've tasted freedom, and nothing tastes the same after that. The night after I drew the line, my apartment felt both empty and alive. Empty because I knew I had finally cut something that had defined me my whole life. Alive because in that silence, I felt possibility breathing for the first time. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the key Harold had given me months before. Its edges caught the faint glow from my lamp, almost winking at me. Do you ever have an object that feels heavier than it looks? Like it carries a story waiting to be lived? That key was mine. And I knew where it was telling me to go, so I did. The next morning, I walked the familiar street that led to the hidden studio. My heart pounded like it did the first time I found it. I half expected the door to be gone, like it had only been a dream. But there it was. Tall, wooden, painted deep green, standing like it had been waiting just for me. The key slid into the lock with a satisfying click. I pushed the door open, and just like before, light spilled out, warm, golden, humming with life. Music echoed from somewhere inside, brushes clattered. Someone laughed so loudly it shook the walls. The air smelled like paint, coffee, and possibility. I stepped in and heads turned. But not with judgment, with smiles, with recognition, with belonging. "Anna!" Harold's voice carried from the corner. He looked older than last time, hair more silver, but his eyes sparkled the same. He walked over, arms wide. "Welcome home!" That phrase again. Welcome home. This time it didn't feel like a mystery. It felt true. People I barely knew pulled me into hugs. Someone shoved a mug of coffee into my hand. Another dragged me over to show a sculpture, half finished, clay still wet. I laughed, really laughed for the first time in weeks. And it hit me. I wasn't the invisible child here. I wasn't too much or not enough. I was just Anna. And that was exactly who they wanted. Pattern interrupt. The family you've been searching for isn't the one you were born into, but the one you find when you finally step into the right room. I wandered deeper into the space. Murals covered the walls now, some new since my last visit. One showed a girl standing under storm clouds holding a lantern. Another showed a man breaking chains off his wrists. I stopped, staring. Every brushstroke whispered a story of survival, of healing, and suddenly, I wasn't alone in mine. Harold joined me, following my gaze. "We all came here carrying something heavy," he said. "But weight feels different when you carry it together." I swallowed hard. For so long, I had begged my family to share my weight. They never did. And yet here, people who didn't share my blood, who owed me nothing, lifted it without me even asking. Someone strummed a guitar, someone else sang. I sank into a couch, coffee warm between my palms, and felt tears prick my eyes. Not the bitter ones I'd cried in silence. These were different, softer, healing. This was my return. But more than that, it was my beginning. And I want to ask you, have you ever walked into a room and felt for the first time like your soul could finally exhale? That was me, right there, in the collective. A year sounds like a long time, doesn't it? But when you're finally living instead of just surviving, it moves fast. 1 year later, I'm back in the collective, only now the space feels different. Maybe it's me that's different. The walls are still covered in murals, but now there are new ones. colors exploding, stories painted in layers. I catch myself smiling, realizing that I helped some of those pieces come to life. My hands left prints here. My voice carries weight here. I walk through the studio and people nod at me, wave, call out my name. Not because they want something from me, not because I'm the forgotten child trying to be noticed, but because I belong. That word, belong. It's everything I never thought I'd feel. And today, I'm not just here to create. I'm here to give. There's a girl sitting on the old leather couch near the window. She can't be more than 20, her backpack clutched like a shield, her eyes darting around like she's afraid someone will ask her to leave. I know that look. I used to wear it like a second skin. Harold catches my eye from across the room. He gives the smallest nod, like saying, "It's your turn now." I slip my hand into my pocket. The key is there, cool against my skin. The same key that opened this world for me when I thought I had no place left to go. My heart pounds as I walk over. She looks up, startled, like she's been caught somewhere she doesn't belong. I smile. "Hey, I'm Anna." Her shoulders drop, just a little. She whispers her name back, voice barely audible. I sit beside her. I tell her what I wish someone had told me that first day. This place, it isn't about what you've done. It's about who you are. You don't have to earn your spot here. You already have it. And then I pull out the key. It gleams in my palm, catching the late afternoon light. For a second, she just stares at it, confused. I laugh softly. I know, it looks like just a key, but it's more than that. It's the same one someone gave me when I needed it most. And now, it's yours. Her eyes widen. Her fingers tremble as she reaches out. The weight of the key lands in her hand, and I see it, the exact moment when hope sparks. It's small, but it's there. And in that instant, I realize this is what family feels like. Not blood, not obligation, but passing light from one person to another so nobody has to walk in the dark alone. Flashback. Me 1 year ago, clutching that key with shaking hands, walking into this space like an intruder. And now, I'm the one holding the door open. The circle continues, and maybe that's the point. Healing isn't just about finding a place for yourself. It's about making sure the door stays open for the next lost soul who wanders in. So here I am, 1 year later. Not the invisible child, not the girl begging her family to see her, but a mentor, a builder, a keeper of keys. And if you've ever wondered whether things can change, whether you can change, let me tell you, yes, 1 year can rewrite everything. I used to believe family was something fixed, something written in your blood, in your last name, in the stories passed down whether you liked them or not. But now I know better. Family isn't just who shares your DNA. It's who shows up when your chair is empty. It's who claps the loudest when you succeed, even if they have nothing to gain. It's who looks you in the eye and says, "I see you. I've got you." For the longest time, I begged my parents and my brother for that kind of love. I twisted myself into shapes, worked harder, got louder, then quieter, always hoping one day they'd notice. They didn't. And that absence nearly broke me. But here's the twist, the thing I want you to really hear. Sometimes the family you were born into will never give you what you need. And that's not the end of your story, because true family, it's chosen. I look around the collective now, and I see people who were strangers a year ago. People who came carrying their own wounds, their own storms. And yet, they reached for me. They didn't just welcome me, They celebrated me. They celebrated with me. Close your eyes for a second and imagine this. A room full of voices shouting your name, not because they expect you to earn it, but because they're proud of you simply for being you. Can you feel the difference? That's what I feel now, every single day. Pattern interrupt. What if the greatest freedom isn't fixing the family that broke you, but finding the one that heals you? I'll be honest, it still stings sometimes. When holidays come, when I see pictures of smiling families online, there's a part of me that aches. But the ache doesn't drown me anymore, because now I have tables where I'm wanted, rooms where I belong, people who don't measure my worth against someone else's spotlight. And maybe you've been waiting your whole life for someone to tell you this. You don't have to keep chasing love where it's not given. You're allowed to stop running. You're allowed to choose a different door. For me, that door was painted green and hidden in plain sight. For you, it might be something else. A friend who feels like a sibling, a mentor who feels like a parent, a group that feels like home. Family isn't always blood. It's where you're seen, supported, celebrated. That's the truth I carried too long to keep myself. So here we are, full circle. You've heard my story. The empty seats, the slammed door, the green painted key that opened more than just a room. You've seen me break, rebuild, and finally draw the line. But now it's about you, because I know my story isn't mine alone. Somewhere out there, you felt the sting too. Maybe it was the birthday they forgot, the promotion no one cared to celebrate, the way your own laughter felt too loud in a house that never really heard you. Have you ever found family in the most unexpected place? Think about it. Maybe it was the friend who sat with you when the world fell apart. Maybe it was the teacher who believed when no one else did. Maybe it was the stranger who became your safe place, your anchor. Those are not accidents. Those are the moments you're meant to remember. Here's what I learned. Family isn't something you're stuck with. It's something you get to build. And if you've been waiting for permission to let go of the ones who couldn't love you right, this is it. But I don't want this to end with me just talking. I want to hear you. Your turn. Drop your story below. Tell me, who showed up when no one else did? Who clapped for you when the seats were empty? Who made you feel seen? Because maybe your comment is exactly what someone else scrolling tonight needs to read. Maybe you're words of the key that unlocks another door for someone still sitting in the dark. And if you're still searching, that's okay too. You're not late, you're not behind, you're not broken, you're on your way. Pattern interrupt. What if the family you've been waiting for is closer than you think? Maybe one reply away, maybe right here in this community. So share, speak, write it down. Let this be more than just my story. Let it be ours. Because true family, it starts here.